8 real stories. 8 moments where someone was already there, watching, waiting, or inside, before anyone knew. Some of them found out too late. One of them is still waiting to find out. Pay attention to the last story, because she is still living it right now. Story 1. We saw something we weren't supposed to see. I am posting this to make sure it is recorded somewhere, just in case anything happens. I was driving through a very remote area for spring break, and around 1 to 3 in the morning with a friend named Jeb. We had to stop for a bathroom break just off the highway. A gas station was closed. We decided to go in the bushes. It was the middle of a severe thunderstorm. Felt like driving through a constant car wash. As we were relieving ourselves, Jeb said, "Hey, can you see that giant rock poking through the trees on that hill?" I said, "Yeah, just barely." He said, "Look on top of it." There was a barely visible outline of a person standing on top of the rock. They were trying their best to stand perfectly still, staring directly at us. It was clear they were not wearing any kind of rain gear. We sprinted back to the car. Jeb said he thought it might have been a woman, but it was hard to tell in the rain. I said the car beats someone without a car 9 times out of 10. So we angled the headlights toward the rock to get a better look. The brights barely cut through the storm, but what we saw in that fraction of a second stopped everything. 2 grown men in completely black clothing, soaking wet, working together. One was dragging something large, the other appeared to be digging. And for the split second they turned toward our lights. Both were wearing masks. Dark, painted masks that looked like something from Halloween. Before we could process it, they dragged whatever it was fully behind the rock. I have never gotten back onto a highway that fast in my life. The woods were isolated, just a small patch beside the highway. The storm would have ensured no witnesses. I still cannot come up with a logical explanation for what we saw. 2 men in masks, dragging something in a storm at 1 in the morning, and no witnesses for miles. The next story started quietly, years before it ended on the front page of a newspaper. Story 2. My stalker ended up killing 2 girls. This story happened in Ohio in the 1980s. I was a teenager, long before cell phones existed, living with my parents near Columbus. I do not know when the first time he saw me was, but the first time I saw him was through our kitchen window. We had a pop-out greenhouse window, and it was late at night. I was getting a glass of water. All the lights were off. I happened to look outside, and saw the figure of a man standing just outside the window. I froze. Then I went back to my room, acting like nothing had happened. It may seem strange that I did not do more, but this was not the first time I had felt someone watching me. For weeks before that night, I had just known, that someone was outside my bedroom window. We lived in a 1-story house that backed up to a park, so people passing through was not unusual. But for weeks, late at night, I would wake up with the strongest sense of being watched. It was summer, so my window was open, though I had blinds and a screen. After a few of these nights, I started hearing it, someone running their fingernails slowly across the mesh screen, 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes I would run to my parents' room, but by the time we went back, he was never there. They did not really believe me. This went on for months, until it finally began to snow, and there were footprints visible in the ground outside my window. My parents at least acknowledged he was real, but did not do much. This was the 1980s. Then it all came to a head while I was home alone with a couple of friends. We were getting ready to go out. The blinds were up on 1 bedroom window. I turned around, and he was standing directly in the window, staring at us. He was a frightening-looking man with bright orange-dyed hair. I screamed. My friends screamed. We all ran into the bathroom, which had no outside windows. I finally found the courage to run to the kitchen and call the emergency number. The police arrived around the same time my parents got home. No sign of him. The police basically accused my friends and me of drinking and making the whole thing up. A few weeks later, I picked up a newspaper and stopped dead in my tracks. His face was on the front page. He had attacked 2 girls at a gas station and killed them. The police shot and killed him when they tried to detain him. I remember feeling shocked, and then, shamefully, relieved, because he was not coming back. He spent months outside her window. Then he killed 2 girls and was killed himself before anyone ever held him accountable for what he did to her. The next story has been going on for almost a decade, and it is still not over. Story 3. I have been stalked since my childhood. From as far back as I can remember, this started when I was 9, 10, or 11 years old. It was lunchtime at school. I went outside to play with my friends after eating. We were playing hide and seek. I ran and hid behind a tree near the fence that separated the playground from the road. A white car pulled up and stopped. The passenger window rolled down. Inside were two young women with wide smiles. The kind of smile that felt wrong, like something out of a horror movie. I do not remember exactly what they said, but they offered to take me for a little drive. I stared at them for a few seconds, then I ran back to the other kids. I told a supervisor, but she did not believe me. I had a very active imagination back then, and that worked against me. I am 19 years old now, and I still see them. They have figured out my social routine over the years, where I work, where I hang out with friends. They have been confronted by police once, and were allowed to walk away. I plan to move somewhere far away when I get my life fully started, but until then, I still regularly see them walking and driving slowly past me. It has been nearly a decade. The same two women, for nearly a decade, watching her grow up, and the police let them walk. The next story is different. It happened in one day at an amusement park, and it started with someone just trying to be kind. Story 4. The creepy ride partner. I met while at an out-of-state amusement park, alone. This took place about a year and a half ago. I was 24 years old at the time. It was early November 2024, one of the last days Cedar Point Amusement Park in Sandusky, Ohio would be open for the season. I had decided spontaneously to go before they shut down for the winter. I could not find anyone to join me on such short notice, so I went alone. I am introverted, familiar with the park, and just wanted to ride some rides by myself. I drove 3 hours from Michigan to Ohio. Cedar Point was nothing new to me, but I was about to meet quite a character. I arrived around 3 in the afternoon and went straight to the Millennium Force roller coaster. In front of me in line was a short, bald, clean-shaven guy about my age in a plain hoodie and jeans. He struck up small talk about the coaster, which I entertained. As the line moved, things escalated quickly. He told me he was autistic and claimed to have savant-level intelligence. He asked a lot of personal questions. By the time we boarded the ride, he had gotten my birthday, roughly where I lived in Michigan, where I went to college, and what retail chain I worked for. He also asked to ride with me for the rest of the day. I tried to put my foot down and said I had come to enjoy my own company. He immediately guilt-tripped me, asking if it was because of his autism, saying people always do this to him. Against my better judgment, I agreed to one more ride. I want to be clear. I am painfully aware of how spineless I was throughout this entire day. I kept caving in the name of not wanting to be rude. One more ride became 3. In line for the third coaster, he told me about a close friend he had feelings for and asked for my opinion. He described the friend as possibly straight, but not entirely sure. It slowly dawned on me that I was the friend he was talking about. After the third ride, I tried firmly to end things. He went into full guilt trip mode. At one point, heading toward the bathrooms, he asked me multiple times not to leave while he went in, saying people had ditched him before. I waited. He then asked for my phone number. I agreed, thinking it would help me extract myself politely. Of course, he immediately asked me to text him, so he would have my number too. I caved. Now he had my number. He got offended and said, and I quote, "Do you think I am going to stalk you or something?" I held my ground. He then asked specifically what town I lived in. I declined again. He pulled up a Maps application on his phone, zoomed in on his own house, and said, "See, now you show me yours." I still held my ground. By this point, I was mentally exhausted, scared, and a whole state away from anyone I knew. I was in public, which was the only thing I had going for me. I agreed to one final ride, just to end the tension. As we boarded, he talked about riding it with his ex-boyfriend. I sat on a ride shaped like a tower, next to someone I was genuinely becoming afraid of, questioning at what point I would be justified in just walking away and running. On the ride, I finally decided to be honest. I told him that guilt-tripping people for wanting their own space and asking very personal questions the first day you meet a total stranger will always push people away. We got off. He went quiet. We walked toward the park entrance. He stopped, looked down, then slowly looked up at me with a strange expression and said very slowly, "Do you ever just drive real slow past a friend's house and just watch them?" I said no, I have never done that, and kept walking. He backpedaled and tried to play it off as a joke. I turned to him, said it had been great, it was nice to meet him, and walked away. I kept my body angled toward him as I went, ready for anything. He froze and stayed where he was. I walked to my car 20 rows out into the parking lot, got in, locked the doors, and called my fiancée. I still think about how much information he had. First name, birthday, phone number, a 20-mile radius of where I live, the school I attended, the retail chain I worked for. I keep a firearm in the apartment now, partly because of that encounter. I learned my lesson that day about setting boundaries with strangers. Especially alone, especially in another state. He asked if he ever drove slowly past a friend's house just to watch them, and then laughed like it was a joke. The next story is the shortest one tonight, but I promise you will not forget it. Story 5, Sharp-Dressed Man on the Subway. About 15 years ago, I went to a rave in Brooklyn with a couple of friends. We hopped on the subway afterward. We were the only ones in the car. Then a sharp-dressed man got on. He looked like he could have been an extra in a music video for a big band swing song. Well-dressed, put together, completely out of place at that hour. Not a big deal on its own, just a guy. Except he stood uncomfortably close to us, closer than necessary, shifting his weight from foot to foot, never a good sign when someone makes themselves closer than they need to be on public transit. Then he lifted his leg slightly and did a small kick. A fairly large piece of human waste dropped out onto the floor right as we were crossing over into Manhattan. Before I could even react, we reached the Manhattan stop, and a large number of people poured into the car. I tried to warn everyone. I could not stop what happened next. I just had to watch. We moved to the next car. When I got off at my stop, the car he had been in was completely empty. Sharp-dressed man, let us never meet again. Some encounters do not need a weapon to be unforgettable. The next story started online when she was 14 years old, and it is still not fully over. Story 6, I have been stalked online for years. This goes back to around 2022. I was 14 years old and spent a lot of time playing an online shooter game. I would not normally use my microphone because of social anxiety, and also because female players in that game tend to get targeted. I met a guy who seemed pretty relaxed. He invited me to play with his friends, and I accepted. One of them was sweet and funny, and we got along well. I added him. We started playing together more often. We exchanged contact information on a messaging platform. He was clearly into me, praising me constantly, texting a lot. A few months later, we exchanged social media handles and started messaging there too. We had never defined what we were, just occasional flirting that never went further. Then he asked for my account on a disappearing message app. I agreed, even though I had a bad feeling. Things turned sexual after a few days. He sent pictures and videos. I did not send anything back at first, but I entertained it. That was my first mistake. About 6 months to a year after we first met, when I was 15, I told him I did not want a relationship, but that we could stay friends with benefits. He agreed enthusiastically. I ended up sending him pictures. I genuinely thought I was safe because of the screenshot notification feature. That was my second mistake. A few weeks later, I realized I had never actually seen his face and knew almost nothing about him. I started asking more questions. His name was Joshua. He lived in Florida. He had multiple mental health conditions and had had trouble with the police before. When he finally showed me his face, I realized how serious the situation was. I started pulling away, which made him furious. Eventually, I cut him off completely and blocked him everywhere. Then my sister texted me asking who Josh was. My knees went weak. When she came home, she gave me a look. I started crying, and she hugged me. He had sent her my pictures and threatened to leak them unless I came back. I told my mom, and we went to the police. They said they would send officers to our home and take my phone and talk to both of us. That was when the reality of how serious this was hit me. I got scared and backed out. That was my third mistake. A month or two later, his brother contacted me and told me that Joshua regularly sold explicit images to people with illegal interests on encrypted messaging platforms. I was terrified, but still too scared to go back to the police. Over the following months, he contacted my friend's boyfriend, asking if he wanted my pictures. Then he contacted my then boyfriend, threatening to send him everything unless I would talk to Joshua again. I unblocked him and told him to leave me alone or I would go to the police. He replied, That would just show me how much you love me. I blocked him again. That was my fourth mistake, not following through. Every few months, I get a new follow request from a new account. And every time, I think it might finally be over, he finds another way back in. I feel like I cannot escape him, no matter where I go. She was 14 when it started. She is still looking over her shoulder now. The next story happened inside someone's home, and the most terrifying part is how calm the intruder was. Story 7. She acted like she belonged. She did not. I want to start with the day my brother and I moved into our new townhouse. On the very first morning, I stepped outside to smoke a cigarette. My brother followed me, and we were talking about football, when he suddenly froze, pointing toward the wooden frame of our covered patio. Written in large black marker was my name, Ryan. Neither of us had had any friends or family over yet. We had moved everything ourselves. It had not been there the night before. We never figured out how it got there. 2 months later, I went to a bar down the street with a friend while my brother stayed home. Normal night. I got back around 1 in the morning. My brother was already asleep, so I ate, went upstairs with my German Shepherd, and went to sleep. The next morning I noticed immediately that my bedroom door was wide open, and my dog was not in the room. That never happens. My brother does not enter my room while I'm asleep. He would not let my dog out. I brushed it off and went downstairs. The first thing my brother asked me was, "Did you bring someone home last night?" I told him no. His face changed instantly. Not confused, scared. He asked again, "Are you sure no one came back with you?" I swore I had not. I had not spoken to anyone besides my friend all night. He told me what happened. At around 3 in the morning, he heard loud noises downstairs. Thinking I was putting together the flat-pack desk I had just bought, he got up to tell me to be quiet. He reached the landing halfway down the staircase and turned on the light. At the bottom of the stairs was a girl. She was standing there, completely calm, picking up the desk box that had fallen over. She leaned it against the wall. Then she looked straight up at him. Neither of them said a word. He told me he did not confront her or call the police because my German Shepherd was standing right next to her, completely relaxed. So he assumed she was someone I had brought home. What unsettled him most was that she did not panic when she saw him. She did not flinch, she did not run. She acted like she belonged there. After a moment, she casually walked into the living room. Not toward the front door, which was 2 feet behind her, into the living room. He turned off the light and went back to bed. That is when it hit us. My bedroom door had been wide open. My dog was not with me. Whoever that girl was, at some point during the night, she had been in my room. She had already been in his room, and the dog did not even bark. The last story tonight is happening right now to someone who cannot afford to move, cannot get help from the police, and is sleeping with the lights on every night. Story 8. I think someone is watching me. A couple of years ago, I made a post about someone who appeared to be living in my apartment complex and was hacking into my speakers and other devices, playing disturbing songs through them at full volume at random hours of the day and night. After months of that, the situation eventually stopped. I moved out shortly after and never found out who it was. I do not know if what is happening now is connected, but I am scared. I moved into a new apartment about 6 months ago. It is a nice place in a safe suburb. Everything was fine until about 2 months ago. At first I thought I was just being forgetful. My front door was sometimes unlocked in the morning, even though I was certain I had locked it before bed. The bathroom light would be on when I got home from work, even though I always turn everything off before leaving. Until things happened that could not be explained that way. I leave my keys on the side table by the door every single night. One morning I woke up and they were on the floor by the back door. Another time, I found my bedroom window cracked open. I have a cat who is very adventurous. I never open that window. I never open any window. I started to really panic. I am a young woman, I live alone, and I have had strange things happen to me before. My bedroom faces a narrow alley. You can hear everything through the blinds, people walking, talking, coughing. Lately, it has started to feel deliberate. One night at 2:30 in the morning, I woke up to tapping on my bedroom window. I froze, could not move, tried not to make a sound. After a while it stopped, and it went completely silent. The next morning, I found 2 fingerprints smeared across the outside of my bedroom window. I told my landlord. He brushed it off and said it was probably kids from down the road. I installed a camera at my front door 3 days ago. Since then I have had 3 motion alerts between 2 and 4 in the morning. Every time, the footage shows nothing, just an empty alley. But I am becoming increasingly convinced that someone is standing just out of frame. 2 days ago, my bedroom light was on when I came home from work. I have not used any of the same devices I had during the speaker hacking incident. I changed my number, moved apartments, created new accounts, but I cannot shake the feeling that whoever it was found me again, or that this is someone entirely new. I went to the police yesterday. They told me they cannot do anything without proof. I do not know what proof would even look like at this point, but I know something is not right. I am checking every lock multiple times a night. I am sleeping with a light on. I am jumping at every sound, and part of me is terrified that whoever it is waiting for me to break. 8 stories. A body being dragged in a storm. A stalker who killed 2 people before anyone stopped him. A woman who still sees the same 2 strangers after nearly a decade. A man who stood in a parking lot and asked if you ever drive slowly past a friend's house just to watch. An intruder who had already been in the bedroom and the dog did not even bark. And a woman alone in her apartment right now, checking her locks, sleeping with the lights on, with fingerprints on the outside of her window that were not there the night before. If even one of these made you hold your breath, like this video, because it helps more people find these stories. Subscribe right now, because I post real stories like these every single day. Drop a comment below. Which story are you still thinking about? I read every single one. Stay aware.